I am worried and worried big. He slapped himself 52 times.
Could you be guilty?
It's never too late to change a child's behavior, but it gets tougher with every passing day.
Next, Dr. Phil. That's tomorrow.
When I go to bed at night, that's when I lay there and I obsess. Oh my God, who's going to take care of him when we die? And sometimes I pray that he dies before me, so then at least I won't sit and wonder what's going to happen to him and who's going to take care of him. I cried to my son Julio, and I had him promise me that if something happened to myself or my husband, that he would take care of Luz for the rest of his life. And then he starts crying. He says, Mom, he can live in the basement even if I'm married and have kids. And that's not something that a child like him should have to think about.
Well, that was Sarah talking about the realities that you consider when you're a parent facing the ultimate test, living with a child who may be more difficult to deal with than you have the resources, the abilities, the insights, the understandings to bring to the table. Now, Sarah and Julio have a 10-year-old son, Luz, and he is dealing with autism, and clearly this affects the entire family, right? It affects the other children. This is not about throwing parents under the bus. Now, I'm saying you're not involved enough because I want to get you more involved. But everything you've told us about him, other than the hours he works and the absence, is he is a loving, committed husband and father. So she didn't throw you under the bus either. But you've got to know that this is a lonely feeling on her part when you're gone 70, 80 hours a week, right?
Right, yes, I do.
What do you think about that?
Well, I wish I could be home more, but, you know, I need to work to pay the bills, so they're not going away, so I do what I have to do to make ends meet.
Yeah, so you're between a rock and a hard place. You said we've got all of these expenses, and we've got to create money to pay the bills,
right.
But yet I'm also needed at home. But do you recognize that you are needed at home?
Yeah, I recognize that, yeah.
I mean, because this is killing you. Tell me about your exercise.
I feel my only outlet is exercising, and I probably do over-exercise, but that's my only release, and I feel at least that's a little healthier than drinking alcohol or doing something like that. But
oh yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah. We don't need you drunk at home,
no.
Okay? But we also don't need you dropping 23 pounds. You used a pretty good word in the first tape piece. You said, exercise is my addiction. In fact, you do it so much that you actually hide it and lie about it because you don't want to be forthcoming, because you know that you're over-involved and that's your escape, right?
It is my escape. Yeah.
And it is true that it's a healthy, positive thing in the right degree. But the truth is, you have an autistic child that is emotionally dysregulated. You guys aren't talking about it, and that's kind of a denial as well, because if you're working 80 hours a week, when you get home, you've got to be tired. You've got two other children, and you know they told you a lot of negatives when you got the diagnosis, right? They said he'll never this, he'll never that, he'll never do what he's supposed to do, and they also said you'll probably lose family, friends, and probably each other. Well, the divorce rate among parents with autistic children is about 86%. Now, you say, well, I don't want to hear that. But you need to, why do you suppose that is? Why do you suppose the divorce rate is so high?
A lot of tension, you know, when you have a child screaming like that, it makes everybody tense in the whole house, you know. I could be trying to, you know, help out and it's not working and we get frustrated. You know.
And we don't do things together, so when he does come home, I want to leave, get away, and then when I come home, he goes for a little while. So it's not, we don't do anything together really, and I don't think we've had a vacation.
Autism is still a mystery. Look, there are lots of theories about this. Genetics, as I was mentioning before, nutrition, stress from the environment, toxins, vaccines. Our own staff member, promo producer Debbie Hatterley, was told her son basically had no future. But Debbie said, "I will not accept that." She quit her job, started an intense program that gave her whole family miraculous results. Take a look.
When my son Graham was 2 years old, he was diagnosed with autism. We started noticing at birthday parties and stuff he wasn't social. He would go off into the corner and not participate with the other kids. He would sort of zone out in his own world. And he would find one toy and start picking it up and dropping it, picking up and dropping it for hours and hours unless we stopped him. The doctor did the test, and she would hold a cookie above his head, and a typical child would normally point. I knew he wanted it, but he just couldn't process, like, to point to the cookie. He couldn't do it. And then she asked if he could respond to his name, and I thought, oh, he could do that. Graham. Graham. And, you know, after 7 times, he never looked. So the doctor told us that autistic kids, they don't make friends, they will never be married, they will live with you the rest of your life. Sometimes they need to be institutionalized. It was heartbreaking. It's like having a hologram of your child because they look the same, but there's no eye contact, there's no connection, and it's horrible because the baby that you used to be able to interact with, suddenly you can't interact with them. The doctor told us that they had been having a lot of good results with the early intervention. So every hour that Graham was awake, we were doing something to retrain his brain. We would have to put him on our lap and physically take his hand and make him pick up a triangle piece and put it into a triangle puzzle, and a circle, put it into the circle puzzle. He started making progress. At 4 1/2, he started saying single words. After 3 years of the early intervention, we decided to try to mainstream Graham, and we put him in a typical school with typical children, and by kindergarten, he was doing pretty well. And then when we went back to the doctor, she couldn't believe this was the same child. And it still, you know, stumps our neurologist. Graham actually gives hope to other parents who have autistic children because he's almost living proof. Not that it's a cure for autism, but just that early intervention can definitely help. I remember thinking, oh gosh, my big goal was will he ever be able to dress himself. Now he's 8 years old. He's on a ski team, he's on a football team, he made 2 touchdowns last week. It's unbelievable. It's just a miracle.
So Graham scored a couple of touchdowns last week, right?
He did.
So he's, and the important thing about that is he's engaged. He's involved in the social process of a team and all of that, which is critical.
It's amazing. Instead of just going off by himself, he's in the huddle, he's giving directions, he's excited about it, he's cheering, he's high-fiving his teammates. Yeah. It's a different child.
You cannot imagine that right now with Luz, right? I mean, that just seems unobtainable. I want to introduce Dr. Jim Sears. Dr. Sears is a frequent expert here on our show. He's a pediatrician. He always is the go-to guy when you've got questions. One of the things that I know a lot of parents are curious about, Dr. Sears, are immunizations. Have they been found to be a cause of autism? Because we hear a lot about that. It's all over the media.
That's a really tough question, Dr. Phil. Unfortunately, we don't have the answer yet. Bottom line, it hasn't been proven. There's no proven link between vaccines and autism, but it hasn't been disproven either. You talk to the vast majority of parents with autistic children are convinced that it was the vaccines, at least more than half of them.
Did y'all feel that way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
And what about the vaccines would trigger this? Are there toxins? Are there metals? I mean,
sure, there's certain ingredients. You know, it's hard to argue with a mother that it wasn't the vaccines when one day her child was normal and the next day it wasn't. They weren't. But you know, there's you know, some of the preservatives in the vaccines, and luckily the companies are paying attention and they're taking some of these ingredients out. Time will really tell.
Now, there is a massive profiling that can be done that looks at like over 100 different dimensions